Alright, we've got one box this time. Just walk to the side and try and do that nice and safe. Here, nothing else. So first we have Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead. Was that the subtitle of it? The show I didn't quite finish because I lost momentum, and there's just like 2 episodes I still need to watch. There's so many shows for which I only have 2 episodes left to watch. But let's get in there, take a peek. Region A. This is a Viz release. Interesting. So let's see. Let's do it out of English, Japanese. So English dub. Let's set that aside and see if I can actually read this, because that's a Bucket List of the Dead. Okay. So first we got the actual discs. Okay, 2 discs. So I still haven't seen the 2nd season of Promised Neverland there. I think I have a vague idea of why it's not such a liked 2nd season now. So this feels like there's more to this than what it is, but I can't find anything. Just green on the inside. Okay, nice and straightforward. And then the extras. First we have postcards, and since we only have the 2 releases, we might as well Zone 100. I was like, it looks like an N and then a sideways M. I'm like, okay, are they letters just all bonkers and stuff? But no, it's the title of the show. Now the question is, can I get this darn thing open? So I'm getting starts to all this, but it's not actually coming off. That's more like it. Yeah, I know. Weird that I'm... Oh yeah, nothing on the back, so just cool postcards, basically. And then we've got a notebook, the 100 things I want to do before becoming a zombie. Hold on. That looked like things from the actual... Oh, I see. So this is like a recreation of the whole notebook with probably the things written in the anime placed in there. And maybe something where if you wanted to you could add to it, but it's an interesting collectible. Then last but not least, Classroom for Heroes, whose name I'm like, I don't remember this, but now that I see the characters on the front. Well, I knew this at the time I ordered. It's like, oh yeah, this really strange show. Regions A and B. Audio. So Japanese with English subtitles only. Okay, that's good. Oh, and different underneath the slipcover. Very nice. That said, I'm not getting any traction with my fingernails, so scissors to the rescue. I'll just put that on the side. I guess I haven't been 100% consistent, but whatever. Disc 1, Disc 2. So 2 Blu-ray releases with 2 discs each. and more art. I kind of want to see it that way. It's a little hard to see, but good enough. Oh, there we go. All fun stuff. I think it's that side, and brief, but here's this week's Physical Anime Collection update. Alright. Got a lot of stuff to watch. Nothing that I watched with my Friday friend because he was still out, but he should be back this coming Friday, so probably we'll finish the dub of Slime Season 3 and maybe make some headway into My Hero Academia Season 7. But in the interim, for stuff that aired, so I'll Become a Villainous, that will go down in history, episode 2. I think still fun stuff along the same lines as the first episode. More, I hesitate to call it character growth, so we'll call it player growth of the main character in episode 2. Kind of interesting. It's been fun. I guess we'll see what I have to say after episode 3. I think it's been fun enough that I would probably continue watching it unless it does something radically different to drive me away from it. But yeah, next week should be interesting. A Terrified Teacher at Ghoul School, I did not watch. That was still on my list as something I might watch, and I haven't necessarily given up on it, but still haven't watched the first episode, so we'll have to see. Acro Trip, episode 3. I guess it's very similar to episodes 1 and 2, and since this is the third episode, this would be the Judgment. I think this show feels like it's defined what it's going to do and isn't going to do anything maybe beyond what it showed in the first 2 episodes. I mean, it might, but I think it's not. It's supposed to be a kind of simpler one. Whether or not I'll continue watching it, I'm not quite sure, but we'll have to see. ReZero, Season 3, Episode 52. I'd say it was a pretty crazy episode. Episode 1 began, it had the right pacing for stuff. Episode 2, though, required a lot to happen in this episode. I mean, a lot did happen, and I'd say it was kind of in a good way. And at the same time, where did we end? We ended with that reveal and maybe understanding certain things a little bit more. But overall, I thought it was a fun, pretty exciting episode. The Duo or Damsel Conquers the Dragon Emperor, episode 1. Let's see. Off to an interesting start, I would say. I guess if there's any problem with the first episode, it's that I'm not quite sure what sort of show we're going to get. Like, is it going to be like a 7th time loop in certain ways? That one's hard to say for certain, because 7th time loop was definitely setting itself so that it would be using that mechanism for pure awesomeness. This one is doing something a little bit different, but I'm not quite sure how different. And enough so that I wouldn't say it's necessarily doing the same thing, so it might not really be different so much as just, oh yeah, she went back in time. But I don't know, I guess I'll still have to see more of it, but I enjoyed what I saw in the first episode so far. Loner Life in Another World, episode 3, the girls episode, i.e. the girls of the class. What happened at the end of it? Okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah. So, if this is the 3 episode mark, I'd say it's a... I'm liking it. I'm just trying to think of the words I would use to specifically describe it. This is episode 3, so 3rd episode, whatchamacallit. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. That just came on while I was too busy thinking. I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I guess at this point, I'm not sure what to expect because it's a bit aloof, but kind of fun. It doesn't feel like it's as world building, but maybe it'll be. So I guess we'll have to see more episodes. But hard to say how to judge it from the 3 episode mark. So kind of maybe if it does something more awesome, it probably doesn't win your attention. I don't know. I guess I'm blabbering. Is it wrong to try to pick girls in a dungeon? Season 5, episode 2. I really hate that elf son of a bitch. I don't know. Maybe I just hate that entire familia at this point. But this is... See, I definitely like the aspects of this show where Bill gets to be more heroic. And there's plenty of those in at least a speckling of the seasons. And some of them seem to be a bit world building instead of that per se. Like, I think that's what season 2 was like. And it's really hard to tell what to make of this season because so far it's of stuff where it's like those elements of the show I find are enjoying, but I don't know. At this point, the show's set itself up for, geez, there better be a really good fucking reason these assholes are assholes because I don't trust this show, rather this season, with that because it seems like maybe a season 2 all over again. I don't know. We'll have to see. Goodbye Dragon Life, episode 2. I thought it was all very enjoyable. Like, I think some of the tropes are not unexplored, but I don't know. I liked those interactions, and if there's any problem I would say with them, it's that I don't know. So the show kind of establishes that Lamias are known as dangerous monsters, and to a certain degree I would say that in most video game sort of scenarios and many fantasy ones that could also be true, but you know, this show is kind of championing, okay, but this person has a personality. It's like, yeah, and it's a fun personality, but I guess I just don't see why that would necessarily mean that people are afraid of Lamias, per se. But it could be similar to that concept, I guess, of like vampires always being seen as dangerous, even if you have an individual vampire person who's actually really nice. It's just somebody who succumbed to their desire to misuse their powers, I guess, that causes I guess people to have to be worrisome about that, but I don't know. I guess the lore about this feels a little strange, not necessarily bad. I think there was something I was watching where I'm like, yeah, the lore here is all over the place, but I don't think it was this one. Very strange. Well, I guess we'll have to see what episode 3 brings us. Dan to Dan, episode 2. I guess. See, I was wondering if it was just a me thing in episode 1, thinking, man, the main girl's a bitch. But no, episode 2's, yeah, she's a bitch. Did somebody call her that? Somebody called somebody that, and I'm like, and I was cheering for it because I agreed with what they were saying. But I don't remember what that was. In this case, though, it's that, you know, yes, I was putting 2 and 2 together correctly, that the guy did end up having the same name as as another person that she's idolizing. And it's like, okay, and she reacts to that, and that's okay, but her reaction to that is to tell him to not use his own name. I mean, I gotta say, that makes me want to lock somebody up in an insane asylum until they can integrate with fucking society. Because they have problems in their own head and they're making it everybody else's fault. She probably would tax somebody too. And, yeah, but again, I think that's supposed to be the point. Because outside of that, you know, it's very interactive, crazy, and I'd say pretty fun. Let's see, that happened there. Terribly mysterious. Is it the next episode? It's the next episode. The next episode was called Granny vs. Granny. So, you know, it's off to a fun start, I'd say. A fun continuation from the fun start. But I think we're supposed to see both of our characters grow a bit. You know, our guy character also showed some, yeah, I don't know why I was about to call him main character, because they're both the main character. it's about the two of them and their really strange relationship. And yeah, he's definitely got to learn a bit. And yeah, he's showing interesting bits of that. I wonder how much of that will be things that end up rubbing off on him the right way through the show. Yeah, all in all, I'd say still a pretty decent episode 2. If you liked episode 1, I think you'd like episode 2. And then Thursday, Mecha Ude Mechanical Arms, episode 2, which I put off watching, but I watched it and it was actually a very fun episode 2. I think more fun than episode 1. I feel like there's something about this that's off. Like, I wasn't quite sure who worked on it. I thought I took a peek and I didn't see Studio Trigger. Maybe it's not Studio Trigger. Maybe it's Skynex, or maybe former Skynex or Trigger, both employees, or something like that. Or maybe none of them. But overall, it does have some of that same spark that I'm thinking of from those in a good way. So if it's them, I think they're continuing to do something mostly good, I think. But if it's not, then it's somebody who's, I think hinting at a pretty good formula. I think the main issue is this world doesn't make sense so far. Like, it's almost just a premise that's just standing up on its own. Not exactly that bad, but it's almost, it feels a little bit like that. And maybe that's because it's still only giving us pieces of why should any of this matter? Why do some of the people react the way they react? I think there's bits and pieces of the understanding there. I guess it's just not enough to know for certain that I know what the show's going to be, but I can say that it's at least pretty fun. Lots of quick, small interactions happening that are making me chuckle, I would say. Let's see. Sword Art Online, Gun Gale Online, Season 2, Episode 2. So like I said, like Episode 1 seemed to kind of get into the meat of this stuff really good, and I thought Season 2, Episode 2 was very entertaining. If anything, I'd say that the problem was that, I kind of wanted to keep going. But, it didn't. It hasn't. So it's, I'd say it's moving at a good pace. It doesn't feel like it's dragging its feet and giving us something that doesn't feel entertaining, but maybe somebody that enjoyed and remembers Season 1, like they watched it a couple times, has a different opinion than I do. I only vaguely remember Episode 1, and mostly only because Season 2 gave us a recap. But I would say this was a fun episode because it did give us what was teased at the beginning of the first episode, and us getting to see that in an expanded fashion. So overall, a good thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to communicate about it. Off to a fun start. Magic Lumiere, Magical Girls Incorporated, Episode 2, I thought was entertaining. I think along the same premises as good as the first episode, which could be, if this show is supposed to be longer than a single season, a single one core season, then maybe that could be why people abandon it. It's because this show strikes me as something that's definitely, okay, this is really good as it's going, but there is some serious danger of, once it establishes, I guess, what it is. No, I guess once it gets past the intro stage, it could end up in a thing where it's like, okay, now it has a story that it's doing, but is the story really about the cool things about our main character? And I don't know, we'll have to see. Probably the more interesting thing is an observation I had relating to Amazon's streaming of this. So one big problem with it is there is significant post-credit stuff. But when I watched the first episode, I thought that I reached the end of the episode because Amazon transitioned to some other show about boats. But it actually showed something after the credits, so it made the beginning of this episode a little confusing. It's like, oh, I guess they did an interesting jump. But no, they didn't do a jump. Amazon just has a system that's set up where once it reaches the credits, it assumes it moves on, even if there is like a minute or two after the credits. So that's a bit of an unfortunate thing on Amazon's side, but, you know, I still got to see episode 2, and I'm enjoying what I see. It's just, stuff, I guess. Dragon Ball Daima episode 1 was pretty fun, but I'm not sure if it's fun in the same way as the meat of what this show is going to be. We're going to have to see that from episode 2, I think. But in terms of what it did, there are things about it that I'm not sure about, just having watched it on my own. Maybe other people know this, maybe other people got other thoughts from this, but I'm trying to figure out. So this is taking place after the Buu saga, kind of shortly after it. I'd have to go back to the beginning of Dragon Ball Super to see how old Trunks and Goten are there, to find out, I guess, how far in the future that one would in theory be. So I'm not sure if this is supposed to be an alternative timeline to Super, or maybe some magical adventure that happens in between Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. It's tricky enough that I'm not 100% sure. But there was something about it that was just really appreciative, just kind of watching it, and I don't know, it pretty much did a recap of the Buu saga. Maybe not any of the Gohan high school, none of the training stuff, just kind of a sort of recap of it. But the way it did it was, it felt kind of fun. Characters in the universe, watching that stuff, reacting to that stuff, the way we kind of saw the characters react throughout the Buu saga. But kind of a it was a good alignment, because elements of the Buu saga are important to whatever this show is doing. And one of the neat things I think it did was, I don't remember this having been explicitly mentioned at all in Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Super, but this one establishes that the Namekians aren't aliens, they are demons, which I think is actually a good callback to when King Piccolo was, I think, supposed to be like a Demon King Piccolo or something like that. And then him calling himself a Demon King didn't make sense, because he was a demon, and maybe he knew that, or maybe the Namekians knew that, but that's kind of established that, like Dabura from the Buu saga, the Namekians actually come from the demon world. They originate from there, at least. At this point, though, they live more outside the demon world than in the demon world. But then they also established that Majins apparently are from the demon world. So, like, the cool Supreme Kai sort of stuff isn't like its own species that's in the other world, but actually people who immigrated from the demon world, who are taking on the positions of otherworld stuff. Maybe? I'm not sure. But the only thing I've seen so far that really confirms whether or not this is part of Dragon Ball Super lore or not is that they do confirm that they go specifically to Universe 7. Like, they specifically say that when those characters are traveling. So that kind of tells me, okay, that's a thing. But then what about all the other characters? I don't know. Lots of curious and interesting things to think about. Overall, it was fun. It wasn't like the worst power cut part of Dragon Ball Z. Sometimes those parts could have been really awesome, but like Dragon Ball Super knew, okay, if we go back to whimsical, people actually can watch a whole lot of Dragon Ball if it goes whimsical again. Like, for Dragon Ball Super, I would say that the probably the Goku Black stuff was the most meh. And the Tournament of Power I didn't care as much for, but still found it enjoyable because of, well, I guess because even though it was doing that, it was still being very whimsical while doing a whole lot of it. Maybe not the best whimsical, a little slow. I think the real problem is just that Jiren was kind of a letdown. But outside of that, it had a lot of cool elements, but I don't know. I'd say episode 1 is off to a good start. I'm curious where it's going to go after that. Let's see, stuff from Saturday. Demon Lord Retry R, episode 3. I'm trying to remember most... Oh, yeah, he was doing his own sort of stuff. He was going in there. He was interacting with that thing. So, yeah, it's definitely, now that it's covering new material for real, it definitely feels different than the first season did, but not necessarily bad or unwatchable. Maybe there's just sort of a more whimsical element to it, with a couple characters still maintaining the same sorts of character traits, but some of them, of course, like I've said before, really different. But we did finally get to see more of the hero introduced at the end of the first season. And it was entertaining, and I don't know, lots of curious stuff. Lots and lots of curious stuff. Oh well, fun stuff. The healer who was banished from his party is in fact the strongest, episode 2. This is the one that I was thinking, okay, I'm enjoying this, kinda, but I think it's more as a fantasy junkie. I think, lore-wise, it doesn't make sense. See, it kind of sort of establishes that, okay, yeah, he's not much of a healer, but, you know, maybe kind of because of that, or maybe because his strengths aren't necessarily that. You know, it gave the impression that, okay, he was brought on to parties as a healer, and he doesn't function well as a healer, but he functions well as everything else. Okay, and I think it's trying to say that that's what it's doing, but the problem with it is when it gave his backstory, it's like, okay, well then how the fuck would he have gotten experience with all this other stuff? Because it almost makes it sound like he wouldn't have had time to do that. He wouldn't have actually been spelunking in the dungeons on his own or something like that, and gaining the dungeon knowledge that he would need in order to be good and all those other skills that would supposedly be a part of things. So it's maybe inconsistent, requires a bigger suspension of disbelief on the audience's part. We'll have to see what episode 3 brings us, but I'm noticing just that lore inconsistency, or maybe that storytelling inconsistency, and maybe it's not, maybe I missed something, but I guess I'm just telling you all of my feelings, so take that into account. Ranma Half, episode 2, I think covers what happened in Ranma after pretty similarly, and while it does have that Rumiko Takahashi whimsicalness, I kind of realized I'm probably not going to continue watching past this point. Like, I think the important stuff here would be to see how it as a show plays after all this development. So once it stops developing world and lore and characters and setting and all that stuff, that's the question. Because I think the real problem with the original Ranma Half isn't that stuff was weak. It was that stuff was strong. But once you get from that to, okay, now this season, now they're doing martial arts version of this, martial arts version of that. Somehow it feels like you have to push yourself to keep watching. At least to keep binge watching. And so I think that's where the difference is for this one would really come into play. But the problem is, I forgot just how frustratingly pushy so many of these damn characters are. And it's just like, so there's neat moments, but then there's this pushiness, and I think when I was younger I could tolerate it a bit more, but right now I'm just such a cranky little bitch that I think I'm just going to stop there at episode 2. It might still be good. I don't think the animations felt like spectacularly better than what the original did, but not having gone back and watched it, I can't say for certain. Again, I got that feeling in the first episode that some of the way the battling between Ranma and his dad happened just felt more fun than I remember the first episode actually being. I think it was doing the same actions, just somehow it was animated more fun this way. But again, that's a weird thing. Then again, we're talking about Ranma Half. It's a weird thing. we got the first episode of Demon Lord 2099, and I really liked it. Like, the premise is the Demon Lord reawakens 500 years later in a cyberpunk world. And what I like about it so far is he really feels like a character out of place for real, but he's not some goddamn idiot about it either. He has trouble adjusting, but ultimately he's in this cyberpunk future, and unlike that other one with the Demon Lord resurrected and there were the girls with the guns and stuff, like, as interesting a concept as that one was just sort of like a, maybe the elements didn't feel like they meshed together as well. In this one, though, they meshed together really damn well, because the point is, I think it's playing with a premise and not playing with and this character is OP and in this situation. I mean, it's really fun to have an OP character in a new situation that you haven't seen before, maybe to certain people, and you can take that with your own grain of truth. But this episode actually establishes that his high and mighty attitude has no place. The cyberpunk technology and the magic he's used to were married together. And this seems to be really about that, and how because of that he's actually not that powerful anymore. And it's like, that's actually pretty fun storytelling. And I think you can appreciate it because he has to eat a humble sandwich. And his reaction to some of that stuff is like, okay, yeah, but he realizes he really is out of place. His expectations and thoughts are out of place. And the way he shows it to the one underling that was with him when he woke up honestly makes the episode. I wouldn't say it's like Code Geass strong first episode or Death Note strong first episode, something like that. But I would say that so far it's been a pretty compelling first episode. And I definitely want to see more of it. So I highly appreciated it. I just want to see what it does with it. Let me see. Reincarnated Aristocrat, Season 2, Episode 15. That is an E. Yeah, okay. My mouse is in the wrong spot. And then, anyways, I'm digressing. So far, okay. They made the character that I didn't like in the last episode actually very respectable in this episode. They're setting up, they're moving fast, but not like, I don't think they're moving faster than they did in the first season. Well, okay, there were 2 episodes to introduce what's-her-face, so maybe a slight speed increase, but I would also say that since it's no longer introducing us to characters, it needs to move a bit faster. It knows it needs to do that, and I feel like the pacing is pretty well, and it's moving on to the next important thing, which is, I think, emotionally where the show needs to go. So overall, I think a pretty good season 2. Let This Grieving Soul Retire, episode 3. Unfortunately, this show seems to be showing more and more that it is leaning on, oh, this character happens to have the right things, do the right things, and everybody misinterprets him. And, you know, it's worthwhile to bring up Eminence in Shadow, because that's actually what made me drop it from the first episode, or first 2 episodes. I think the first 2 episodes. Because it was just like, first episode was interesting enough, but episode 2 was just like, oh my god, is it just one of those? I don't know if I can watch it. But Eminence in Shadow episode 3 showed just like, okay, no, that's a thing, but we've got something more entertaining going on here. And I'm not sure Grieving Soul Retire gave us anything in episode 3 that would be, oh yes, this is the more interesting thing. It just seems to be more of, oh, everybody does that. See, in my mind, the reason it would be better if he was actually much better than he thought he was, and he was blind, because the alternative is he's the only sane person, everybody else is just a fucking idiot, and that's not as fun. So I'd say a pretty weak episode 3. Maybe there's a bit of a curiosity keeping you in, but in my mind, the main problem is it's definitely showing that it's one of those shows where, oh yeah, it's all about how he just happens to keep getting everything right. And it would have been better if it was, okay, and here's some secret things he does that he doesn't realize. Like, he just thinks, oh, it's just a hobby he does, but he doesn't realize how powerful they make him. And I don't know if his attitude makes sense given that he supposedly thinks that he's not as good as he actually is. So, there's a lot of things about it that are just like, unfortunately, not working for me. I might still give it some more tries, but if I drop it, it's probably because of that. Let me see. I got the first episode of Suma Show watched. There's 3 episodes out, which is unfortunate because it means I could have watched 3 episodes. But today was going to be a day I was going to catch up on watching of stuff, and I did not get that opportunity because the internet was down. It came back at around 3:14 p.m., which if I had work today, that would have been me at work, and then maybe I would have planned things around that. But I was planning on relaxing and watching stuff, which I kind of couldn't do. Anyways, that's probably why I didn't watch episodes 2 and 3 of this. The lower prioritizing of watching those episodes was because episode 1 was neat enough, and it probably works fine as an episode 1. It might even be doing the kind of stuff that I would think about maybe as a long term in the series. But, this whole, you see the character who died again things needs to end with, in one of 2 ways. Especially if you deal with a reincarnation thing, you definitely need a, usually this is something you play with at the very end of the show, so to play around with at the very beginning of the show leaves in territory where it's like, okay, well, you have to consider those things. There's 2 possibilities: the soulbound people return to each other, or the people learn to move on thing. And based on the way it's set up, I feel like it has to be the later, just because where he's grown, how seeing her again helped him heal. But to me, the thing would have been, keep in touch. I'm so glad to know that you've been resurrected, but at this point, you're at a different point in your life in your resurrection, and you need to lead your own life. So at that point, the wife becomes more similar to a kid, a daughter, that you have to let go and let them go and do their own life. You can't be the attached parent without becoming really problematic. If you domineer your child, then there's a problem. And to be fair, she was his wife, but I feel like emotionally that's where the show needs to go, but the first episode didn't feel like it wanted to go there per se. And so because it lingered, I kind of can't help but feel like the show itself is at risk of being that, oh, I can't let go of this sort of thing. But I digress. I might watch episodes 2 and 3 and have more to say about it, but episode 1, I guess an okay enough start. Elements of it definitely heartwarming, but we'll have to see where it goes from there. Notorious Talker runs the world's greatest clan, episode 3. I'd say this is kind of a good episode. Okay, the big problem is I'm not quite sure what this show is going to be like going through. It didn't help that episode 1 and episode 2 kind of gave us different feels, I guess. But the thing about episode 3 that I'd say is good is some of that feel from episode 2, I feel like is still present here. So I mentioned in episode 2, excuse me, in episode 2 our main character is like, oh Jesus, that was brutal. and kind of awesome and karmic, even if it was brutal. So, episode 3, I feel like they introduced a new character, and so far, I like her. She feels like she has a similar sort of edge as the main character. And the way it uses her is fun so far, but I guess, again, episode 3 kind of lacks a little bit because, like, okay, it looks like they actually work really well together. What is that going to mean in terms of the way the show progresses? So it may be one episode behind in that regard. Episode 4 may very well give us that. We'll have to see. But so far, I'd say off to a fun start. But, you know, I think if you've watched that far and you're like, I didn't care for it, maybe that means it's a good episode for judging that. Because I don't think the show will give any mind blows beyond this point. It just may continue to be interesting in a very edgy way. And I'd say good edgy. Sirei Gensoku Spirit Chronicles Season 2 Episode 2. I don't like that guy that was introduced, but then again, I'm not sure we're supposed to. He's a little pompous, maybe with good reason, good intention, and maybe not all a bad thing. And I think it works out mostly because he's not the main character. But our main character and his group, they were entertaining enough to watch. They did all that stuff. What did they do at the end? I think they did that. Okay. Overall, I'd say it was a nice, kind of doing things sort of episode. I don't know how to place it, but I'm not sure how the pacing felt compared to season 1, because I think I always had all of season 1 available, so I was able to just always binge it. But for season 2, I thought this was good. I wanted to see more. Overall, I thought it was entertaining. I'm not sure what else to say. Nina the Starry Bride, episode 1. I wonder if that's supposed to be Starry-Eyed Bride. I don't know. I don't remember if I copy-pasted that or not. And it seems to be off to a good start, but I don't think I'll be going past episode 1. For me, I think it's mostly because I was curious to see how it felt just putting it on, and nothing about it struck me as, okay, beyond the fact that this just seems to be a well-executed shoujo, is there anything else compelling me and interesting me to watch it? And I'm not sure there is, but I think for people who are really into the shoujos, you know, this show may actually work. It plays a lot of the tropes, but it feels like it's playing them pretty well, pretty fun, entertaining enough. But I guess I'm looking a bit more for that fantasy kick, I guess. Maybe medieval fantasy would be the better way to play. But anyways, all good stuff. But again, I'll probably just drop episode 1. And then last but not least, Ari Fureta, season 3 episode 1 aired today. And so I watched the season 2 EOAVs. That would be extra original animated videos. So I'd say that one was actually more entertaining than I would have thought. The EOAV. Not necessarily great. I mean, I think the reason I was a little trepidatious about it is the same reason that I probably didn't remember anything about season 2 episode 13. Is that, okay, it's flashing back in time to when they had the fish girl as a daughter. The mermaid girl daughter stuff. And while that was great time period, it did mean that it didn't feel like the show was really moving forward with season 2 episode 13, just an extra thing added. And I would say that the EOAV looked like it was same time frame, and it was, but it was a little bit more interesting than I would have guessed. So overall good stuff. And now we go into season 3 episode 1, and I'd say it's off to a good start. It's revisiting something that happened and was established in the first season. It's like, okay, I would have thought of that as just a gag, but now it's turning into world building. And it wasn't like a one-off, briefly in an episode gag. I'm talking about they had an episode or two dedicated to it, and it was entertaining, but it's like, okay, well, our characters move on from that, right? Well, no, and I'd say that the way they acted moving forward into what season 3 is setting up for us was very heartfelt, I would say. I felt like I liked it. So season 3, I think, is off to a good start. Alright, so outside of that, is there anything to talk about? So yeah, my internet was down for 15 hours. And while I was able to sleep through most of that, unfortunately, since my plan during most of that period was to watch anime, I didn't get to watch that. And I couldn't, like, go on YouTube. I mean, I could with the phone, but I kind of didn't want to, if I didn't really need to, save data plan in case something really disastrous actually happens. Not sure why. I think I'm paying a lot for actually pretty big data plan, but I digress. So instead, I was focusing a bit on Pokemon. I guess, though, I'm not doing anything too exciting. Mostly just focusing on in Scarlet and Violet. So I finally did the Mochi Mochi Mayhem thing, maybe last weekend. And this previous weekend, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start doing the coaches. Because I never did invite any of the coaches, and let's start inviting them and start getting their trades and all that stuff. I don't think the trades are terribly necessary, but it feels like something to collect. It takes quite a lot of barbecue points in order to do that. And so the good news is, because the internet was down, I spent my time today grinding barbecue points while the internet was down instead of watching anime. And good news on top of that was that so because I have 2 Switches and a copy of Scarlet and Violet played on 2 different things, it basically means that I can actually be 2 people doing the BBQ quests at the same time. If you don't know what I mean, that's just a second DLQ thing, and DLC, sorry. But the problem was I hadn't updated the Switch hiding behind this laptop in a while. I knew there was a system update, and I couldn't do it because it said, okay, there's an update, but because it couldn't connect to the internet, probably to verify that the update was still good. You know, basically, I thought, well, I'll just wait, because when I go to bed and wake up in the morning, internet will be back. Oh, it's not back. Well, it's supposed to be back by lunch, so I'll maybe just do a little bit of stuff, a little grinding on my own. But then after lunch and after grocery shopping, it's like, okay, it's still not coming back. So tether my Switch to the phone to download the update so that I can have the 2 games join each other locally, and I can just do twice as many barbecue quests on the one Switch and get enough BP in order to, I guess, do all the coach stuff. Now, I could do some date resets, but of course, by the time I was done with that, I was pretty exhausted. Everything's shifted half a day. You know, half things are shifted a day, half things are not. It's a very confusing day. My brain is actually a little messed up from the way everything worked out today. But anyways, did that stuff, entertaining stuff, nothing really big. If there's any big project I might try to do, you know, there's a part of me that's not wanting to take the dive, but I kind of would like to see if I could get my hands on the original colored Magearna. And there's many reasons why I might not be able to, but the way you do that is you have to upload enough Pokemon into Pokemon Home. Specifically, complete every dex. I think it was to the end of the 7th gen. It could be to the end of the 8th gen. And the main problems with that is, first of all, in theory, I have the ability to transfer Pokemon up from the DS, 3DS era still, because I think, because I downloaded Pokemon Bank in advance and all that stuff, I'm still able to upload it to Pokemon Home because I downloaded all that stuff, but I'm not 100% sure. So that should mean that any mythicals that I got back then, I should be able to upload and move forward. But the NCA is the one I can't do that with because that's the only distribution I've missed. So my hope is Pokemon Legends ZA, or was that AZ? Whatever that one is, that includes the NCA as a catchable Pokemon. And I think there's some hope for that just because Pokemon Legends Arceus gave us the 3 Generation 4 Mythicals. And Generation 1 and 2 Mythicals... Well, I don't remember how available Deoxys is in the Switch era, but Jirachi and Mew are available on a Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl in a pretty easy to get manner as well. Which makes me hope that there's other Mythicals I'll be able to get. But maybe what I need to do is work on transferring some fellas up. But that's a lot of Pokemon to work for. And with the NCA being the main problem, the issue there would be that I would have to get her from Pokemon Go, I think. And it's a little disheartening because if I do that, I won't be able to upload her to Scarlet Violet. She'll be stuck in Pokemon Home because I think mythical Pokemon that you upload from Go to Home cannot be transferred into those games until you have them in your Pokédex. So, like, if I'm able to transfer from the older gens, I should have Hoopa and Volcanion. Whatever that water, fire thing was. I should have access to the Sword and Shield guy. I might not have Zygarde. That might be something I'm also missing. I'll have to be careful, but maybe that's available on Pokemon Go. Well, that would be a risk. But should be able to, in theory, transfer stuff up. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do that big project. It sounds too exhausting. We'll just have to see. Beyond that, is there anything worth talking about? I'm not sure. So I guess I'll wrap things up. Y'all, have a nice week.